And welcome back, Jason Confused Podcast. I am Jeremiah Broderick, and as always, I am joined by Matt Mislinski. We are joining you after the Celtics' depressing, I'm going to go with depressing loss
Yeah.
to the Atlanta Hawks, 117 to 106. Somehow the score got close a couple times. I don't know if I've ever seen this many missed layups and inexplicably made threes on the other end.
Yeah.
How much of this was this was a crazy fluke game? And even if it was, does that make it hurt any less?
No. This is one of the few games this season where I legitimately was like, I want to turn it off early. It was brutal. Credit to Atlanta. I thought they showed a lot of stuff that was impressive.
They were
Yeah.
saving buckets from that first game.
Yeah, I mean, they have a well put together team. Jalen Johnson is just a stud. CJ McCollum made some good plays, but just all around, like, they are just solid. That does not explain the sheer volume of, like, contested threes that just had no chance until they went in. So yeah, that it was tough to watch because it felt like we were playing solid defense. Some of like there were a few missed rotations. There were obviously some things that we could have done better. But yeah, just absolutely brutal. And then we were just smoking. Like, there was a lid on the basket for us, and the basket was 10 feet wide for them. And, you're going to have some of those games in a season, but this was a particularly brutal one. I did want to note, just like a random coincidence, I hopped over and checked out the stat line from the Lakers Cavs game. And it was a pretty similar game if you looked at like shooting percentages, like numbers of turnovers, kind of like rebounding. It was like oddly like those two games lined up where they were again like just pretty similar, and the Lakers lost by 30. We only lost
Yeah.
by what, 12, 11, something like that. So not terrible given like the numbers were against us in that game. But yeah, it was a tough watch.
Yeah, and I mean, you always have some of these games each season. Like, no matter how good you are, there's always a game where somebody shoots like incredibly well from three, and the shots that are kind of 50-50 don't go in. In an 82 game season, the sample size is just big enough for that to happen.
Yeah.
Did anything concern you about this game? Was there anything where you were like, that seems like a problem we have? Because I think this stretch, for me, this is the first stretch we've seen this season where Jalen has kind of hit a superstar wall. Last three games, averaging about 20 points on not great efficiency. He doesn't really seem to be able to get wherever he's going like he was able to for the first 40 games of the season. Not saying it's forever, but it does seem like having everything revolve around him and being responsible for everything is kind of getting to him in some way. And he's not able to produce at the same level he was the first 40 games.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of it for sure. It's like, I think Scal referred to this yesterday as like, it's the dog days of the NBA season. Like, everybody's kind of tired, waiting for that all-star break. Just the
Can I
weather, the travel. Like, I think that catches up to guys at a certain point.
can I just say, and this is an issue I have with like all NBA reporters, but mostly Scal,
Yeah.
is when are not the dog days? Because the
Yeah.
first week of the season, you hear Scal being like, oh, these are the dog days, early season, nobody knows what the standings are, tough to
Yeah.
get through these days. And then around the NBA Cup, it's like, oh yeah, they got to put the NBA Cup in here because these are the dog days of the season. And now it's in the middle of the season, it's like, these are the dog days. And
Yeah.
then after the All-Star break, it's going to be the same thing where it's like, them dog days. Eventually, you're just bored at watching basketball. Like, just
Yeah.
how many games a year aren't dog days?
Yeah, and I was gonna say, like, it's coming at the end of the season when it looks like it's pretty much just jostling for like
Yeah.
playoff position, but like the teams that are tanking have given up, and it's just kind of it's gonna be like, yeah, these are the dog days. We're just trying to finish out the season.
These aren't the right now. I would argue is not the dog days. Right now,
Yeah,
we're
I mean,
we're in races for seeding.
I think there is like a lull for players around the All-Star break where it just seems like everybody's a little beat up. A lot of guys are dealing with like those little ticky-tacky injuries. We saw like Josh Minot finally come back and play some minutes, but Cato was out with an illness. It just seems like it feels like everybody could use a little bit of a break. But with Jalen, I don't know. I thought he made some. There was one play in particular where the Celtics, like, we just couldn't break through the double digit deficit. And Jalen was just like, screw it. I'm going to put, like, Pritchard had a few moments where he was like, I'm just going to put us on my back. And we just couldn't stop them on the other end. But Jalen had one play where he drove through like two defenders through contact. I think the announcer, it was Drew or Scal, called it like a superhero move where he just like powered through everybody, got to the rim, got an and one layup. So
Jalen
I do think he still
grabbed his arm and he was still able to go through.
Yeah.
Jalen Johnson's a big guy, like to
Yeah,
not even
so
feel that contact.
I think part of it, like, yeah, 3 games might be a little early to call it a trend, but I do think like Jalen had a bunch of open shots in this game that just didn't go in, and like last night, that's just how it went. Like we had open shots that just didn't go in. He had at least two wide open threes. Like there was one where he was at the top of the key, everybody was in the paint, and he had time to like, I noticed he readjusted the ball in his hands to like get his fingers on the laces where he wanted them, and then just couldn't hit that one. I'm like, if he hits two of those shots, he's ending the game with 27 instead of 21, and suddenly it's like, oh, Jalen's doing Jalen stuff. So I think some of it can be chalked up to just like we couldn't score enough last night for what Atlanta was doing on the other end. Again, credit to them. They had some great ball movement. I thought that they were making like snappy passes. They were rotating, like finding open guys, doing some off-ball stuff. But at the end of the day, it's like when your opponent, like their 3-point percentage got dragged down at the end of the game because it was kind of in hand and they were just throwing some stuff up. They were like close to 50% from three on like decent volume. And when your opponent is doing that and you just can't get a shot to fall, it's tough to pull out wins in those games.
Yeah, and I think there was a bit of a statement going on just because of how badly they lost the last Celtics game.
Yeah.
I know that was after they were coming back from like a big West Coast road trip, but if you remember, we did predictions for that game, and I said I was scared of the Hawks.
Yeah.
And then we came out and they seemed completely unscary.
Yeah.
Something in the middle of these two games was kind of what I was expecting when I said that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the Hawks right now seem like they're gelling. Obviously, they moved off of Trae Young. They got CJ McCollum back. It feels like they've kind of found their rotation. Just like Dyson Daniels had a great game last night, kind of underrated, but like a quiet, like 16, 6, and 9 or something like that. I forget exactly what it was. Yeah, 15, 6, and 9 on like good efficiency. So he was showing some stuff. Jalen Johnson was on triple-double watch. Nobody on the Hawks was like killing us individually with their scoring, but I think like 6 of their guys ended up in double digits. So it was just like a really balanced team effort. I think they are like, they added CJ, but they are still a pretty young team. I do expect them to like, this could be a playoff series for us. And I do think like we win that series, but based on how they played last night, again, I don't think they're going to shoot that crazy from 3 every time, but I think they'd pick up a game or two against us in a playoff series.
Yeah, I also am curious to see what they do at the deadline, because they have Kristaps expiring $30 million on their books.
Which they are looking to move.
Yeah. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if they added another guy.
Yep.
If you're Joe Mazzulla right now,
yes,
what's your solution at big man? Because in this game, Neemias Queta was out again.
Yep.
Amari Williams started. It didn't seem like Joe was really happy with how he played in the first half. We go down big. Luka Garza had some really good minutes, kind of
I thought
sprinkled
Luka
throughout.
Garza was solid, yeah.
But that's what Luka Garza is going to give you, is like some solid minutes sprinkled throughout the game. He's not going to be like your starting 35, 40-minute-a-night player.
And he did have 4 turnovers, which wasn't great. I thought he was doing his usual off-ball screening stuff was great. He hit a couple shots. I was surprised. We were like down and kind of like trying to find some momentum, and Luka Garza ended up wide open, and he took a 3, and I was like, and then it clanked off the front of the rim, and I was like, all right, it's that kind of night.
We went on the big run in this game when we had Ugo at center. We just like went back to that lineup out of desperation.
Yeah.
Josh Minot was healthy and played some garbage time. I kind of hope we give him another try at center before just like I guess forcing Amari Williams minutes. But yeah, what's your solution? Do you go with one of those guys? Do you go back to something we've done before, or are we just waiting for the trade deadline?
I think we're waiting for the trade deadline to find like a more permanent solution there. I think for now, like we've spent a fair chunk of the season like begging for Amari Williams minutes, and now it's like, well, Kate is out, you're gonna get him. I think obviously he's gonna like he's still. I thought he was younger than he was. He is 24 years old, I want to say,
He was a
but
five-year
he's a
college
rookie and
player.
like he's still yeah, so he's still figuring out the league, and I expect his development to take a little bit of time. I don't think he's gonna be like the finished product that we kind of hope he becomes this year.
Yeah.
But I think giving him those minutes can't hurt right now. You know, in the dog days of the NBA, you might as well throw him some extra minutes when Kate is out. I don't hate the idea of, I think the Josh Minot at center lineup was like such a potent weapon for the time that it was working that other teams did start kind of like scheming around it and like putting that on their scouting report. I think now they're not going into games looking for that anymore. It might be a good like it might be something that you deploy like 5 games in a row and then put it on the back burner for a little bit and just kind of like Joe Mazzulla has been great at being an unpredictable coach with his rotations,
Yeah.
with his lineups. And so that might be something that we can utilize of like hit teams with it when they're not expecting it, when Josh Minot hasn't played in a little bit or when he's been like more in that wing role for a couple games and then just slot him in at center. But at the end of the day, like we do need more at that position. Like Keita goes down, and it's like if Luca Garza had twisted his ankle, that like I don't know what that game would have looked like, and I don't know what our season would look like if either of those guys had any kind of serious injury. You know, feed Amari right now. Obviously, the goal is still to win games, to get better positioning, to try and climb up those standings, and at least maintain the 2 seed. But yeah, we need something at the deadline.
Yeah, and I see what Amari's tools are, and I definitely think giving him minutes is worthwhile long term, but I don't think he's the best option to help us win games right now.
No. I mean, if Kate is healthy, I don't know if Amari Williams gets more than 5 minutes in that game. Yeah, just. But again, it's like Amari wasn't playing such bad defense that Atlanta was able to build that
No.
lead in the first quarter. Because the first quarter was crazy. Like we were down
Yeah,
by
that
20 in
wasn't
the
his
first
fault.
quarter at some point. Like it was just a brutal. Their shooting was off the charts, and we couldn't buy a bucket. So I don't want to put too much of that on him, but
No, and I don't think that was his fault. Pretty good Anthony Simons game, I thought. Only played 19 minutes, 12 points, pretty efficient. He was kind of one of our only guys who seemed to be able to get to a shot and make jump shots in this game.
yeah,
A little surprised we didn't go to him more. Typically, when we're down in the first quarter and he comes in with like a directive to score.
yeah.
And he did score in the second quarter, but after that, we really didn't go to him a ton.
Yeah, I do think that was interesting. I think especially the way that we were struggling to shoot like and normally like there's a point of frustration it feels like for the past couple of years where like when the Celtics can't buy a shot, it usually is like I'm looking for them to just be chucking threes because that has been like a trend of like and my philosophy has always been like all right, if the shots aren't falling, like get to the rim. We were doing a decent job at getting to the rim yesterday, we just couldn't finish. You mentioned the amount of
Yeah.
just blown layups. Yep. So Anthony Simons, like with his jump shooting, with his ability to score from like all 3 levels, I think would have been more helpful. I did kind of expect to see more minutes from him. I mean, we kind of used everybody last night. Like outside of Josh Minot, who got those like 5 minutes in garbage time, like every single player who played got at least 15 minutes. So it was like a very balanced night in terms of who we had on the floor. Derek White kind of still had some shooting struggles, played the most minutes at 31. But yeah, I think we could have probably used Anthony Simons just to hopefully try to kickstart our offense when we were trying to cut that lead down. I was watching at work and I was talking to one of my bartenders and I was like, if they can get it to single digits by the fourth quarter, like that's all they need to
Yeah.
do. And it was like a 15-point lead that kept kind of fluctuating. It stayed at 13 for a while. I think we did get it down to 9 going into the fourth quarter, and then Atlanta just started the fourth quarter hot and didn't really let up. And it was just one of those games. Like there are lessons to take from it, but at the end of the night, it's like I don't think we're going up against a team that's hitting those kinds of threes as much as they are, and I don't think everybody is going to be missing every shot, like including layups.
Yeah, no, I agree. It felt like that run at the end of the third quarter where we went small, had Ugo guarding their center, and just kind of like run it up and down the court. We were able to get back into it, but it took a lot of effort to get back into it. And part of the reason was you could play 28 for great seconds of defense, and then Nikhil Alexander Walker just hits like a half court fadeaway.
With his left hand.
That one was insane. Where
Yeah.
yeah, the right hand was blocked, so he had to like kind of like weirdly hook shot it from the side with his left, and then it just goes in. Um,
Yeah. And when the other team is having that kind of a night, like again, I've always like since he came into the league, Nikhil Alexander Walker has been one of my favorite fun fact guys of like he's a lot of fun because he's the most ambidextrous player in the league. Like he taught himself how to play with both hands, he can shoot with both hands, he can like
how's that measured? Like the most ambidextrous? Like, is there a
he's
second and third most ambidextrous?
I'll put it this way. He's the only guy that like I've heard every broadcast that he's in. They're like, yeah, that guy can shoot as well with his left hand as with his right. And I haven't heard anybody else in the league like have that even be a conversation. Speaking of lefties, Baylor Shireman had a minute last night.
Yeah,
I
Baylor
didn't
Sharp.
realize. I was watching him shoot a free throw, and until then, I was like, "Oh shit, he's left-handed." But yeah, no, he got that like he got clotheslines pretty hard. I think by Okongwu maybe, and that was in the third quarter, I want to say. And I remember on the broadcast they were like, "Hopefully this puts some fire into them." They looked at it to see if it met the criteria for a flagrant. Because he like stole a ball, went out on a fast break, and you're like, "All right, an easy layup, this will be fine." And then he basically got tackled from behind and then came out and was like, you know what, I'm gonna get to the rim, I'm gonna like he showed me some stuff that I hadn't. I've been on team like give all of Shireman's minutes to Ugo, and last night he really showed like how he can be valuable. He was not a very efficient scorer. He shot 1 of 5 from the field and he missed all his threes, but like he was active. He was getting into the paint. He was finding open guys to pass to. He had a couple nice assists. So like 6, 3, and 4 from Baylor Shireman. I'm like, I'll take that game.
I thought you were gonna lead with the stat they did on the broadcast, where Baylor Shireman is now 16th all-time left-handed Celtics scorers, and he passed like Scoop Wigley or like somebody from like the knees on
Yeah,
that list.
that's got to feel good for him. Hopefully he
I'm
keeps
sure he
climbing up that
knows
list.
about it and
Yeah,
follows that list.
he went into this game being like, all right, tonight's the night I pass Scoop Wiggins. Yeah,
I'm
but
surprised the arena didn't just like explode.
yeah. I mean, he was one of the few guys on the Celtics who didn't have a turnover yesterday. So I'm like, he handled the ball a little bit more than we've been seeing from him, and he was able to like. I kind of like went into the season being like, yeah, he's a shooter, and that's kind of all he does. And yesterday he showed a little bit more like flashes of being able to ball handle a little bit. So that was good. Peyton Pritchard lost on his birthday. That's tough.
That's
He had another minute like late in that third quarter, maybe early fourth, where he was just like, I'm gonna hit like 2 or 3 mid-range shots in a row and try and get us back into it. And then immediately Atlanta would hit another three, and it was like, what are we doing this for?
I think if I was an NBA player, I would make up rankings and
Hmm.
just like announce that I did a thing. So like at the end of this game, if Baylor Shireman had gone to the post game and been like, "Yeah, it's a real honor to be third all time in Celtics players with a belly button ring," and
Yep.
then just like walk off, and you're like, "Who are the other two?"
He's
You know,
gotta be
like
first in that.
you don't, man. You didn't see Larry Bird shirtless. You don't know.
That's fair.
Yeah, yeah, you don't
Larry
know.
was Larry was trend setting early.
You never heard about John Havlicek, the jingly man? Just had so many piercings. He was
I will now only be
real.
referring to John Havlicek as the Jingly Man. You know, all time Dennis Rodman's got to be the leader in belly button piercings.
Yeah, not a Celtic
Not
though.
a Celtic, but
Yeah.
league wide.
Elsa didn't score that much, so I think he's still reachable.
Yeah.
On the
So
on the
Baylor
all-time
Shireman,
scoring list.
yeah. So Baylor he passed Scoop Wiggly. Dennis Rodman's next. We just need confirmation of that belly button ring, and then we can get that tracker started. Yeah, I feel like once we're talking about belly button rings, it's like that's what kind of game this was. It's like there's really just not much else to say. Yeah, just tough. We
Yeah,
weren't passing the ball very well. I thought Atlanta's ball movement was great. They out assisted us by a fair margin.
I
I do
like their
have
team. I mean, I've
yeah,
said that before, that they're kind of the team we thought the Magic were going to be this season, where
yeah,
they have these big, like, 6'10 forwards and big defensive guards, and they move the ball well and are well coached.
yeah.
The Magic have had some injuries, and Paolo Banchero's not playing, like, exactly how we expected. Um,
The East is interesting. Like, I think a lot of people this year have been like, hey, the East is kind of trash. I've heard people disparage the Celtics by being like, yeah, they're second in the East, but like the East sucks. It's like the Knicks have set themselves on fire, and that's their fault, but they have the talent.
yeah.
The Cavs struggled a lot to start the year, didn't quite live up to expectations, but again, like a very talented team. Detroit obviously is doing what they're doing, and Orlando and Atlanta are two of the teams that like could have really taken off this season and I think had slower starts. You're seeing Atlanta kind of picking it up and Orlando is struggling a little bit. But like there are good teams in the East. Like the if you look at like the roster makeup and who these guys have, it
It,
hurts.
I still don't think it's as good as the West, like talent
No.
for talent. And
Yeah, but
that's kind
that's
of what we're comparing it to.
yeah. But it's also, I mean, you look at the West, like the Lakers got blown out in like LeBron's Cleveland homecoming.
The Cavs are starting to figure it out, and that is concerning because they are good.
Yes. Yeah, when every team in the East is playing at their best, like they are legitimate. Cleveland versus, I don't know, Denver or something like that, like would be a fun series to watch. The Knicks, if they weren't self-immolating, like it would be fun to watch like a fully healthy, like flowing Knicks team go against OKC or something like that. Like there are really good teams with a lot of talent that just haven't been performing up to it, which we've taken advantage of, and I'm happy with that. But it does also, going into the second half of the season and getting ready for the playoffs, it's like, all right, if we go into the playoffs and Atlanta is rolling and Cleveland is rolling and the Knicks have figured it out, like them and Detroit, like it's a competitive East.
Let me ask you about this because there was a Bleacher Report update a few hours ago
Hmm.
where they said Jason Tatum may not return this season, which isn't really news
Yeah.
because from an Achilles, like, you never want to. They've never guaranteed he's coming back. Jason Tatum said he plans to come back, but has never set a timetable. Why do you think this is coming out now? Because this is, I think, either one of two things. It's he had some small setback. He went to the force plates and it turned out he was overcompensating with his other leg. Or it's a leak from the Celtics saying, hey, we're not going to make any huge moves this deadline. Don't get your hopes up, kind of a thing.
Yeah, I mean, the source on that was Chris Haynes, who's a reliable NBA reporter, has a good relationship with a lot of players. So it did say in that report that he hadn't suffered any kind of a setback, and it's a choice on his part that he's reevaluating whether he's playing this season. I think that could be like the front office kind of tampering expectations and trying to like navigate salary and what they want to do on the deadline without trying to make a big splashy move in the hopes that Tatum comes back. I'm pretty surprised by it just because all indications had been like I was one of the people who was like if he's not 100% healthy like don't play him, but it seemed like every video that came out, every kind of update we were getting was that it would be sooner than expected. Like we were originally talking about like maybe March, April. And then it kind of was like, well, they could be ready by February. It's looking like that might not be the case now. I don't know. I mean, it's tough to hear if true. May not play this season. I know like there's been odds that people have been like betting on whether or not he returns this season, and those have been fluctuating pretty odd. But I don't know. I heard Joe Mazzulla on, I want to say it was Felger and Maz or something like that, where they had asked him like, listen, obviously you're not going to tell us, but like what's going on with Jason Tatum and how are you planning on reincorporating him and all this stuff. And he ended up taking that question and answering it mostly by talking about Jaylen Brown and talking about Jaylen Brown's leadership
Interesting.
this year, his growth on the floor and in the locker room in a way that I thought was interesting. Obviously, I'm not going to be one of those people who like look to create tension between Jaylen and Jason or insinuate that there's anything kind of going on there. But it might just be that they feel comfortable with how Jaylen is leading this team right now. And Jason may have wanted to come back sooner, and they're saying, like, listen, take your time with this because we're gonna be okay for right now.
Yeah, and I also think there's a difference between having like a setback, which is like
Yeah.
you trip in practice and sprain the ankle. And the Celtics have been talking a lot about the Australians and their force plates, that when you have an injury like this, especially lower body, to knees, hips, your body will naturally start to
Compensate.
compensate just to get you to move around. Like to
Yeah.
get you to be able to walk, run, but you'll be compensating with the other leg. And a lot of that is non conscious. Like, if you've gone through an injury like this, your left leg's going to get stronger, your right leg's going to get stronger, and you're going to start to, like, jump a little bit more off that leg. So, when we've seen Jason Tatum dunk, like, he looks fine, but it's possible that when you put that force plate under him, you're like, yeah, he's really using his right leg.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of those things that's probably a difficult conversation for the training staff and the organization to have, where it's like, hey, if you come back, you could, hurt your other leg, and that's not a risk we're willing to take. We've given you like a $350 million contract. We're not going to risk that investment to try to make a run this year. So, like, I think that's another way there could be a setback that's not like a injury setback, but could be what's preventing him from coming back. Because it does seem like he really wants to come back.
Yeah. No, I mean, I had back surgery last year. My left leg was pretty much shot because it was running down like the nerve down that. And like to this day, I'm in physical therapy, and my right leg is significantly stronger than my left because of how much it had been compensating for months. And so when you think about like he was up and like walking around pretty soon after his surgery, and obviously he's been doing the workouts and he's been doing the rehab. But it takes a long time to like reacclimate from that kind of just like especially with the legs, like they just so much of it. Like I have friends who have had similar kind of injuries to like their lower body, legs, stuff like that, and they'll like months later find out like they'll go into PT or a chiropractor or whatever and find out that like just from a month on one leg more than the other, like their whole pelvis is realigned, and they have to like it just your body naturally adapts, and it doesn't always naturally adapt trying to find normal. It does just adapt trying to find like workable. And when you're doing high contact, high impact sports like this, I think it's a fair concern to have. Yeah, just kind of looking at this, like the fact that it's not the Celtics are reevaluating Tatum's return, it's at least as presented. Chris Haynes was like, Jason Tatum is reevaluating his own return and is debating sitting out the season. It could also just be like, that's a huge mental step to take. Like, wanting to play, I completely understand, and I think he's a competitor, and I think he wants to be out there. An injury like this, I can't imagine the kind of like mental strain that puts you under of like every step, like you're kind of worried about, especially when you're doing something as explosive as basketball, like every jump off that foot, there might like it, I think it's completely fair for there to be like a mental block of like, shit, if I come back in February or March, like, am I really willing to risk that for this season? And I think it would be completely like justified if it was like, I don't want to take that chance. Like, whether it's coming from the Celtics or it's coming from Jason Tatum, I wouldn't fault any of them from being like, it's better if he sits out this season. Obviously, that sucks as like a fan who wants us to make a run this year. It sucks if it means we don't make a deadline move that would help set us up for future seasons as well. But at the end of the day, like I want Jason Tatum on the floor fully healthy for the next 10 years for the Celtics. And if that means he has to sit out the rest of this season, I'll live with that.
Yeah, and I think there's also an element where the Celtics have not had a great track record in bringing guys back from injuries.
Yeah.
When you look at like the Isaiah Thomas was the big one, but also like Rob Williams. Like we've had guys come back from injuries, injure it worse, and then it's affected the rest of their career.
Yeah.
So like we talk a lot about like the Australians, which are these sort of wise trainers that the Celtics brought in. They brought those guys in because they fired their whole training staff after
Yeah.
the Isaiah Thomas issue. Like I had a personal trainer when I lived in Boston who was a guy who used to work on the Celtics training staff. But because of the Isaiah Thomas injury, they just kind of cleared house. And then he's training me. Like think the drop between training Jason Tatum and then suddenly like counting my reps is
Yep.
crazy. So like the incentive there is clear, like just don't screw up these guys' career.
Yeah.
Yeah. Other report I saw this week was from a Bulls writer who said the Bulls offered Nikola Vucevic to the Boston Celtics for Anthony Simons and a first round pick. And I'm sure they did.
Yeah.
Like, it was one of those reports where it was like, yeah, I'm sure that's a trade they would make. I
Yeah.
don't know why we would accept that really. But I'm wondering if that kind of blows up a little bit of my of trades I've suggested in the past to Chicago. If they're valuing their guys at a level where we need to give them a first just to get off of Anthony Simons.
Yeah, and I think that's a weird one for them, whether it's just they want Anthony Simons as an expiring so that they can clear their books a little bit, or if, the reports are they're looking to move Kobe White and they think that he can be like a new point guard for them. I don't know what Chicago is thinking there, but it does kind of feel like, okay, we're going to trade Vucevic for a point guard and then we'll trade Kobe White to get a new Vucevic kind of guy. It is one of those odd ones that we've talked about from the Celtics perspective of like, I don't want to trade Anthony Simons and then need to go find another Anthony Simons. But yeah, I think that one is, I mean, again, if that's what they offered, I'm like, I'm not surprised. They want to get max value out of that. If they, like, would they do Anthony Simons in like a future second rounder? Like, how firm were they on that? Was there room for negotiation?
Would you do Anthony Simons for Nikola Vucevic straight up? Because I wouldn't.
I don't think so. Like Vucevic in past years, I would. He's been linked to the Celtics before since he was in Orlando, I'm pretty sure. I just don't think like this version of Vucevic is kind of what we're looking for. Ask me about Vucevic from 3 years ago, and I'd probably say yes. But also, Anthony Simons has kind of solidified like an important role on this team that right now we don't have anyone else who could necessarily step up and fill that. So I think the trajectory has moved a little bit. Like the window has shifted from like we need to find a good player for Anthony Simons, and that way we can like get off his contract, and if we can shed some salary and all that stuff, to if we're trading Anthony Simons, it has to be for someone who can like fill that role, fill the need at center, or ideally like two guys who can kind of do both.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not total like if it was Vucevic and Trey Jones or something like
Yeah,
that, I could
yeah,
definitely be talked into it. Because Vuce is also an expiring, so he's on 20 million this year and then expires. I don't think he's gonna get like a huge offer.
no, I think he'll be a mid-level player.
I think below, like he'll probably get like 10 a year, like three for
Yeah,
10 or three for 30 or something like that. Where he's a guy, I think the argument for trading for Vooch is the tax saving.
yeah,
Because Anthony's making 27, you can cut 7 right away and then probably re-sign him for like half what he's making this offseason. So he's like a solid big and would make financial flexibility a lot easier. I just don't know. Like Anthony Simons is the better player at this point in their careers to me.
yeah, 100%. I think one thing about Vucevic as well is he's kind of an Iron Man, which, like, given our center rotation, like, he doesn't miss games. Like, he played 73 last year, 76 the year before that, all 82 the year before that, 73 before that. So, like, having a center that you can rely on who's, like, not the player he once was, but he's still averaging like 17, 9, and 4. Like
Yeah.
that is a valuable player, especially if he's not missing games. I don't know.
He's efficient, he's a good passer. Like
I think he probably becomes our starting center if we make that trade.
I think him
And
and yeah. I
yeah,
don't
but
know.
I think our center rotation immediately becomes much stronger. It's just at the expense of Anthony Simons, and like Vucevic can score, like he's averaging 17 a game, but he's not the creator Simons is. And so it's like another guy that Jalen and Derek and Pritchard kind of have to worry about setting up and getting the ball too.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of like him on offense just because he adds another element to our offense where he's like, if we're in a game like this Hawks game where our three's not going down and they're big and physical and it's hard to drive through the lane, then just being like, all right, let's just give Vooch a post touch and see what
Yeah.
happens. Like
He can
having that
also, he's
optionality.
shooting like 38 or 39% from three this
Oh,
year. So
yeah.
he's like a very versatile player.
And I think there's a chance Kata would still start if they're both healthy, just to kind of, it would almost be like an Al Horford situation where he's like
Yeah.
this center that could start but is coming off the bench. So like I don't hate it, but the value they're placing on it is probably too high.
Yeah, the first round pick is crazy.
First round pick, wild. Other trade news, it seems like Giannis is finally on the block.
Yep.
No interest for this. Well, not no interest, but no real available trades for the Celtics here. Do you have a Giannis team that you're tracking or scared? Because he could go someplace on the East.
I'm not as worried about him going someplace in the East. I've heard people talk about Miami. I don't see it. Like, I've heard a lot of like Giannis trades mostly from fan bases that just want Giannis and they're like, Tyler Hero for Giannis. And I'm like, you're kind of out of your mind. I know that Windhorse just did a show and he was talking about how like the sleeper team is Golden State. He talked about like what Milwaukee is looking for or should be looking for is something similar to what Oklahoma City got for Paul George when they moved off of him. They obviously, Oklahoma City, I think, won that trade pretty handily because they got like 4 first round picks and Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. If the Bucks are looking to reset, kind of lean into a tank this year, and they're looking to get young players and draft assets, I think Golden State has a couple of those. You can give them Pods and Moody and maybe Kuminga. Like they can make the money work, but they also, Golden State has all of their picks. And so like if they're looking for future firsts, Steph Curry's 37 years old, like some of those future firsts, if Giannis, doesn't stay there long term or if something happens once Steph retires and the team is not as strong as they thought, it does feel like there's some future assets to be had there. The team I'm most scared of is Oklahoma, who just have massive amounts of picks. San Antonio is another one that I've heard a lot.
I think what's going to be interesting is how much of it is determined by where Giannis wants to go and how
Yeah.
much is determined by who has the best package for him. Because I think Atlanta would actually be a scary team because they own multiple of the Bucks picks, which would be of higher level. This year and next year, they have those swaps with either the Bucks or the Pelicans. They get the better of those two.
Yeah.
So those are like extremely valuable. And then the money works out very easily because of the Kristaps expiring. You can just kind of throw another contract in there to make it work. I know they're not totally sold on Zachary Risachet, who has
Yep.
been a good prospect so far. He was a number 1 overall pick. Averages like 14 points a game, 6'10", shoots it, good defender. So if you wanted to, there's a ton of like pretty easy trades you could make there. They have some like really promising young guys. They'd be one that kind of scares me,
Yeah.
but I also don't see them mentioned a lot, probably because they're not one of Giannis's picks to go
That's
to.
kind of why I hadn't
Yeah.
obviously there's been over the offseason and everything, like he's mentioned the Knicks, like that just really doesn't work. Miami's always mentioned for these kinds of things, and then,
Sometimes they do, though. That's the thing with Miami, is like they're always mentioned, but sometimes they get the guy.
they get like Jimmy Butler is like who was
LeBron,
fantastic in his time with
Dwayne
them.
Wade, Chris
Yeah, that was
Bosh,
free agency though.
Shaquille O'Neal.
Yeah, but if you
Like,
have to go back 20 years, I'm not as concerned. Like their recent trend has not been like we're gonna go get like a top 5 player in the league via trade. Yeah, no,
yeah.
I think Atlanta is the one that would scare me the most. Obviously, at least in the East. And again, I mean, Atlanta is a booming city that like has been mentioned more and more around the league as like a place players love to go to. I think,
Atlanta's fun. I could
yeah,
see a situation where they aren't one of Giannis. Like, if the Bucks are just willing to send him for the best package, then I think Atlanta would definitely sell themselves on like, let's give it a year, have him play with Jalen Johnson and
Dyson
Nikhil,
Daniels
to
and
Nikhil
Nikhil,
Walker,
yeah.
Xander Walker. Like we have a good team around him,
Yeah.
and we kind of believe in our organization. So like, yeah, let's bring him in and try to sell him on this the year he's here. Giannis doesn't seem like he wants to like jump around to 12 different teams, and
Yeah.
he loved Milwaukee, which is a pretty small market. So I don't think there's like this sense that he needs to be in like New York, LA to
Yeah.
be happy with his life outside of basketball. It seems like he might prefer that, but once you get him there, have a playoff run or two, see how he feels. Because also, your guys are just getting better at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't want to overreact to last night's Hawks game, but I do feel like if Giannis goes to the Hawks for a package similar to what you were talking about with like Ricochet, Porzingis, something like that, I do think they are the favorites in the East.
Yeah.
Um, and that's
Jalen Johnson as a second option would be scary to me.
Jalen Johnson on a basketball court is scary to me. I saw it yesterday. I'm scared. Yeah. I mean, I think it still seems, I don't know, like with the injury that he just had, he's sidelined for a little bit. Most of the chatter has been that it's more likely to happen in the offseason than at the trade deadline. I think obviously that's going to depend on what packages people are offering at the deadline. Whatever team he goes to, that's going to be the story for a while. And it's gonna be a scary league because Giannis being kind of out of the picture in recent years, like the Bucks have just not had the talent. Lillard came and then got hurt, and um, it you forget how good he is, and if he goes to a team that's already like a playoff team, a top five team in either conference, it's gonna be something.
Yeah.
And I think San Antonio would be fun just because I think the Spurs and OKC kind of rivalry that's been brewing this season would just take a whole nother step.
Yeah, if he goes to the Spurs or OKC, it might just be over.
If he goes to OKC, the league is shut down until further notice. Real quick before we end, I have one thing that I wanna talk about Neemias Queta for a second. I have a nickname for Neemias Queta,
Okay.
but it needs a little bit of background. So I did some research, right?
Always
Because
a great sign for a nickname.
yeah,
Go on. No, I'm excited.
no. So listen, I there have just been a lot of games recently where the first possession we're like, get K to the ball, he dunks it. Like it's usually like a Derek White pass to him for a layup or a dunk, and that's like our first score of the game. So I went through yesterday and I ran the numbers. Okay.
Yeah.
This season, when Neemias Queta scores the first basket for the Boston Celtics, we are 9-4.
Okay.
Three of those losses came in the first 2 weeks of the season. One of them, it was the Jazz game where they missed the tripping call. We lost by one. We lost by two. One of them was it opening day against the Sixers? We lost by one. One of them, we lost to Orlando by 13. Those were all October and
Yeah.
November. So in the last 2 months, we've lost one game where Neemias Queta scores the first basket, and that was the 2 point loss to the Pacers a couple weeks ago.
I will say when he does that run out, get the first dunk of the game, that
Yeah.
does get me psyched.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping it has a similar emotional effect on the rest of the Celtics.
Yeah, if you look at just the last 2 months, we're 8-1 when Neemias Queta gets the first basket of the game. So the nickname that I was thinking of when I was doing all this research, I think we should call Neemias Queta the ignition switch. The ignition switch or big ignition?
I like both. I think it needs to be to become more of like a thing that
I think
he
it's a
scores
thing
the
that
first
just
basket.
nobody else has noticed because nobody's going through every single box score for every game and checking the play-by-play for the first basket.
That's what I mean. It needs to become something not just we've noticed. Like it needs to happen more than 9 times for it to become a thing.
I mean, if you look at like that's a third of our wins on the season, like a little bit,
Yeah.
like that's a significant chunk. I think, listen, Drew, Scal, Chris Forsberg, Abby Chin, any of y'all, like make this a thing. Big ignition. When Kata scores the first basket, we don't really lose.
Yeah, that's true. I think that could be a good prop bet. Like what are the typical odds on Neemias Queta first buckets?
Yeah, so right now we're doing essentially insider trading for gamblers. Like, put money on Neemias Queta. Like, the only reason he didn't last night, I'm firmly convinced, is because he didn't play.
This is not insider trading, Matt. That's not how this works. We have
I don't know
no
what you call
ties
it.
inside the Celtics. Observations?
Yeah,
Making
yeah.
observations based on things we've seen. That's what you call it.
See, I like to think that I'm like an educated gambler when I bet on basketball, and really it's just silly stuff like this. But I mean, it's a trend. I think it shouldn't just be there is a prop bet for who's going to score first. I think there should be a prop bet for if Neemias Queta scores the first 2 points, what is the likelihood the Celtics win? And I'll hit the over every single time.
Yeah, so just parlay the two. Neemias Queta first bucket, Celtics win.
Yeah.
If Neemias Queta scores the first bucket, we're guaranteed to win.
See, this is what happens. I haven't bet on basketball in like 2 or 3 years,
You gotta
and now
think.
yep, I'm back. I'm back in.
All right, we can end it there. Thanks everybody for tuning in, and we'll see
We
y'all
will be
next time.
taking a little bit of a break over the weekend, so we will probably see you early next week with our next episode. We'll recap some of the games.